What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review episode 5 of season 3 of Star Trek Picard, an episode called Imposters, for very obvious reasons. If you have seen the episode, and if you have not, go do so, because I will be addressing spoilers in my review. But this episode was directed by Dan Liu and written by Cindy Appel and Chris Derrick, and I thought it was yet another really solid episode in this season. Every episode so far has either been really solid or just outright good. And now that we're at the halfway mark of this season, I think everybody who's been kind of holding their breath, waiting to see if the show will suddenly abruptly start to suck, I think even if it were to do so, we can still exhale and relax, because at this point, no matter what, half the season's good, and that's a pretty good season of Star Trek. But I suspect that the remaining 5 episodes will be very solid and or great as well. And I have to admit, I'm getting to the point where at the end of the episode, when we hear that familiar music begin, I get legitimately sad, because I realize, shit, like, this is all going to be over relatively soon, and then what do we have to look forward to? Which is exactly what I asked executive producer Christopher Monfett when he recently appeared as a guest over on Popcast Unleashed. And my super chat was pretty straightforward. I just asked him, for those fans who have come back to Star Trek due to the approach to this show, what do we have to look forward to in the future? And sadly, the answer was, for right now, nothing. Like, it remains to be seen what the viewer response is, what the overall size of the audience is. And obviously, I would love nothing more than to see more shows springboarding off of this continuity. And along those lines, everybody should go over to this change.org petition to get the great Todd Stashwick his own show when this draws to a close, because I don't know about y'all, I would love to see more of Captain Shaw and his crew. Like, get everybody. I don't know who's going to survive to the end of the season. I don't even know if the Titan will be around at the end of the season. But whoever is still around at the end of this season, 7 of 9, Captain Shaw, etc., put them on a crew and send them off into space to have some adventures, because I like seeing Star Trek progress. I like seeing it move forward. I know there are a lot of people out there who love Strange New Worlds and that sort of thing, but for my part, I just want to see Star Trek boldly go into the future, as long as they have writers as strong as the writers on this show. But I was watching an interview with Todd Stashwick where he admitted that he's currently involved in 4 separate Dungeons & Dragons campaigns. Even if those campaigns are only meeting once a month, holy shit, that's a lot of Dungeons & Dragons. And I say this as somebody who's got D&D books in the background of their YouTube videos and who's currently running a 2nd edition Dark Sun campaign. But goddamn, nerd alert, but he's that rare combination of huge diehard nerd who also has real dramatic chops. And that's an interesting combination. I think my favorite moment all episode was when he said to Jack, "Nice shooting, kid," after he sees that Jack has taken out 4 changelings. It reminded me of something that, like, William Shatner would have said in the late 60s. But also, he knows how to do Star Trek humor that doesn't come across as like humor for goobers. So as much as I love classic Star Trek, as much as I love Next Generation, as much as I love Deep Space Nine, I feel like even if you really love Star Trek, we can all admit that occasionally the humor, you're just like, ugh, that didn't quite land as well as a joke would have on a show like The Orville. I feel like The Orville was a show that really knew how to balance its humor along with its sci-fi. But there was a moment in this episode where I absolutely started howling, where Picard, he's all swept up in the momentum of the moment, and he tells Shaw, like, they need to run. And Shaw just smirks and calls for security. And I find his skepticism about the myth and legend of Picard and Riker to be absolutely delightful. So once again, he just knows how to find that perfect balance between still being totally nerdy, but also being humorous without coming across like a total goober trying to be cute. So yeah, I've said it before and I'll say it again, Todd Stashwick, he's definitely the MVP of this season so far. But let's dive into the episode itself. And I want to repeat something that I said a few videos back, where I mentioned that right now, Star Trek Picard is actually outcompeting Marvel by successfully beating them to the punch on their own Secret Invasion storyline. For people who don't know, Secret Invasion is an upcoming Marvel show that is an adaptation of a comic book series from like 12 or 13 years ago, where basically Skrulls had infiltrated every aspect of life on Earth, and it led to this big giant battle with the Skrulls. And anyway, it was A fine time was had by all, but there's a big show coming out, I think at the end of this year, about the Secret Invasion, but we're getting the Secret Invasion right now. I didn't really know where this show is headed in the first few episodes. I thought they were just teasing this changeling subplot. Little did I know this was going to be like a vast conspiracy going all the way to the top of Starfleet. And so, yeah, Secret Invasion is already here. It just happens to be a Star Trek show instead of a Marvel show. And just in case there are any remaining doubts out there about the nature of Vadic and her crew aboard the Shrike, Terry Matalas himself did confirm on Twitter that all of them are changelings. I was a little thrown off by her little hand thing that she did in the previous episode, but at any rate, here's the showrunner telling us all they are in fact changelings, and as we learn this episode, the changelings have evolved. Even in death, they can maintain their disguises, and only after they start to be dissected do their organs start to liquefy. And so I look forward to learning more about how the changelings have undergone additional evolution this late in the game. But there are so many things about this episode which I enjoy. Like at the beginning, just hearing Riker recording his log, and it just made it feel like we were back to like the good old days of episodic Star Trek. And I get why they've slowly but surely kind of shifted into doing like one story over the course of an entire season. But there is a role for episodic storytelling, which the Orville very successfully employed across their 3 seasons. I don't want to get sidetracked, but they would have their stories that would go across the whole arc, but they would also have standalone episodes. And I just feel like, yeah, not every season of television needs to be a giant 10-hour movie. But the episode also opens with Jack having another really intense vision where we see Jack in uniform, basically killing everybody on the bridge and seeing all those weird red tendrils. I don't know if they're tendrils or vines or roots or whatever the case might be, but we see his eyes glowing. We hear that voice saying, "Come home." And I have no theories about what is the nature of Jack or what is going on with Jack. I'm just very curious because as we've seen, in addition to having all these nightmares and visions and being sleep deprived, we learn through Beverly that these visions or nightmares go all the way back to his childhood. And also, he's hell on wheels in combat. I mean, fighting just one changeling can be a challenge, but as we see later in the episode, he takes out 4 with relative ease. So, yeah, bring on more Jack. I want to learn everything that there is to know about this interesting character. And I hope that he will survive to the end of the season and continue alongside Shaw and the rest of this crew in future seasons of television. But the real surprise and delight this episode was seeing the return of the great Michelle Forbes as now Commander Ro Laren, who first appeared back on season 5 of The Next Generation, an episode called Ensign Ro. But Michelle Forbes, I've always been a fan of her work. She's got that really strong, deep, commanding voice. And, you know, all Star Trek aside, she's been in a ton of cool stuff. Like, look at, like, Swimming with Sharks, one of my favorite movies about the movie biz from the 90s. She was fantastic in that. But she always brings the heat. She never turns in a lackluster performance. And what was great about her appearance in this episode was how initially we suspect she may in fact be a changeling, and Picard is incredibly suspicious because ostensibly it's time for Picard and Riker to face the music. Starfleet has sent the USS Intrepid in order to make an investigation, but right from the word go, things are a little bit weird. Like, instead of using transporters, they're using shuttles, and everybody's talking about Picard and Riker being accused of treason. And I feel like Michelle Forbes was the perfect dance partner for Patrick Stewart in this episode because she really knows how to, like, really roll up her sleeves and get nasty in a dramatic scene. And I absolutely loved watching these two actors working together and the way they explore all their shared history and all their confused feelings that they had for one another, and how, or their unacknowledged feelings that they had for one another, or the assumptions they made about the other person. And it was great seeing Picard turn off the safety protocols in the holodeck and how it leads to this like classic Mexican standoff. But by the end of the episode, I felt this incredible sense of loss when we see the character of Rose sacrificing herself, flying into the Intrepid because she knows her shuttle's about to explode. And this is one of those characters where I hadn't thought about this character in many, many, many years. And the fact that they were able to reintroduce the character, make us get invested in the character, and then break our hearts with the loss of that character all in one episode Once again, the writing this season is just first rate. But over the course of the episode, we learn through Ro that she's really worried about Frontier Day, and we also learn that there have been 12 changeling incidents that are all being kept quiet across Starfleet. Once again, she suspects that there are changelings in place going all the way up to the top. But it's Riker who points out that she's resorting to some pretty old school spycraft techniques, because she at one point hands over her earring to Picard, which is of great significance for Bajoran, but as it turns out, it's a data chip. And the use of that data chip leads to an incoming call, and that incoming call was one of the best surprises all episode, where we hear Picard say, "Mr. Worf," and just, anyway, I got the world's biggest smile on my face, where we finally get to learn how this big elaborate story involving Raffi and Worf, how it's intermingling with and now colliding with the story of Picard. And I must admit that I've been really enjoying the storyline involving Worf and Raffi, and watching all their training sequences early on and how he's trying to impart all of his peaceful warrior techniques to her. And she doesn't really strike me as much of a peaceful warrior, but who knows, maybe she'll get there in the years to come. But also when it comes to putting together a crew for future seasons of television, once again, bring in Raffi, bring in Jack, bring in Shaw, bring in Seven of Nine. Like, you don't necessarily have to have a reunion of the Next Generation crew. Like, they're slowly but surely establishing all these new characters that I would be totally fine with following in the years to come. But when Raffi and Worf are denied access to investigating the Daystrom station, they go see Kryn, this Vulcan who's the head of a crime syndicate, and they're forced into a situation where they're going to have to fight each other or they'll both die. And Worf tells her that a sacrifice is required and that it's been an honor working with her, and he tells her not to hold back. And when she stabs him, he says, "Today was a good day to die, and this is a worthy death." But as it turns out, he's been mastering this technique where he's able to regulate his heart rate. And the way he acknowledges this new technique, once again, it was just one of those classic Worf moments where I just started cackling with glee. And at that point, the Vulcan shares with Worf that the Daystrom station is guarded by this really sophisticated AI system, but of course it has illogical flaws that can be exploited by a device that the Vulcan just happens to possess. And these scenes with Worf, I feel like they perfectly exemplify how to provide kind of emotional fan service to the audience without succumbing to the worst parts of fan service. And what do I mean by that? I guess sometimes fan service can feel like you're basically throwing red meat to people by playing upon their nostalgia or their memories. And I feel like if you do nothing but wallow in nostalgia, you're hastening your own obsolescence as a fictional setting or as a dramatic story. But this show is finding that perfect balance where there is a little bit of nostalgia, and we are seeing this, like the original crew of the Next Generation slowly but surely reforming, but there's new blood, there's new storylines, and the story is moving forward. It's not constantly looking back. And I feel like that's been one of the big problems with a lot of new Star Trek, is they're constantly looking back instead of looking forward. And it just feels like it's taken like 6 or 7 years of new Star Trek to finally find its footing, but that moment finally feels like it's taking shape. And I just hope that they'll find a way to get all the right producers and all the right writers back together. As producer Christopher Monfett said, the great skill of Terry Matalas is not necessarily in like writing individual scripts, but he's a great conductor of the orchestra, and he's just really good at organizing all these various teams that are working on all the different episodes and making sure they're all marching in the right direction. And as this episode drew to a close, and as we saw the Intrepid kind of turning toward the Titan, preparing to attack, and the Titan preparing to get the hell out of there, it just really felt like Star Trek was back on very strong, very firm footing. So if, like me, you're enjoying this show, we all need to bang the drum really loudly, whether that's on social media or just telling people to watch the show. I feel like social media represents a very small part of the population. It's a very loud, vocal part of the population, but a very small part. The biggest thing that the powers that be in Hollywood respond to are numbers. And obviously, when it comes to Paramount and CBS, there are a lot of different players at work, and I won't pretend to have a knowledge of the kind of the behind-the-scenes decision-making process over there. But I do know that if badass storytellers and incredible actors are rewarded with great numbers, then they will get more opportunities to work in the future. So I just really hope that by the end of this season that we're able to kind of amass enough of a fan base for this show where the people that need to receive the message loud and clear, that we want more of this style and this flavor of Star Trek in the years to come. But unfortunately, I have to wrap this video up because I actually have a meeting that I need to go to. But before I leave, I do need to bring you a public service announcement because Manscaped now has beard products and now a brand new nose and ear hair trimmer. If you haven't already heard, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming are traveling north of your South Pole with the revolutionary Beard Hedger Pro Kit. Plus, they've now launched the brand new Weed Whacker 2.0, which confirms they have all the best tools for your hygiene toolbox. Time for you to upgrade your toolbox by going to manscaped.com and using our discount code WRONGREEL in all caps for 20% off plus free shipping. The Beard Hedger Pro Kit is the ultimate package that makes it easier than ever to craft your signature look. This thing is an elite beard trimmer. The Beard Hedger is tough on hair but smooth on your face, leading to single stroke efficiency that brings satisfaction one stroke at a time. And with a nice beard, your face is perfectly groomed, right? Wrong. You need to keep an eye out for those tough to trim ears and nose hairs. The brand new Weed Whacker 2.0 offers improved blades and skin safe technology with a no tugging guarantee. It's never been so painless to mind your manholes. So I've said it before and I'll say it again. I will never advertise a product on this channel or on my podcast that I don't personally use. I love the Manscaped products. I love the Manscaped boxers. I love everything about the Manscaped lineup. And so if you enjoy my commentary on this channel, please consider making a purchase with the discount code WRONGREEL in order to help me in my commentary endeavors. But I need to wrap this sucker up, so please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and most important of all, hit that notification bell and hunt me down on Twitter at Geeking Out if you want to talk more about Star Trek or anything else under the sun. But thanks so much for watching, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.